This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the town of North Haven.
Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Fire Commission meeting for Tuesday, January 28, 2020 to order. I'd like everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We have a wonderful opportunity this evening for a swearing-in ceremony, which is always a pleasure and a joy for myself and for our commissioners. This evening, we're going to be swearing in Mark Santor for Company 3. Chief, some comments?
Mark has been with us for some period of time now, and as we do with most of our volunteers, we swear them in upon successful completion of a probationary period and firefighter 1. So Mark has completed those successfully and is an active member with West Ridge and comes to us tonight with the recommendation of his captain from West Ridge, and I recommend him being sworn in tonight as a regular member.
Very good. I'd like to do so. Mark, would you be kind enough to join me up front for the swearing-in ceremony?
I see you dress up, Mark.
Yeah. Let's turn this way here so that way there folks are going to be able to see. Mark, would you be kind enough to repeat after me and raise your right hand?
Sure.
I solemnly swear
I solemnly swear
or affirm
that
I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the state of Connecticut
and the state of Connecticut
and the rules and regulations
and the rules and regulations
of the North Haven Fire Department
of the North Haven Fire Department
as written and amended
as written and amended
by the Board of Fire Commissioners,
by the Board of Fire Commissioners,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
and impartially discharge the duties of volunteer firefighter
discharge the duties of volunteer firefighter
of the North Haven Fire Department
of the North Haven Fire Department
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Congratulations for this ordination.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks. Mark, good job. Look forward to seeing you around.
Thanks, Chief.
All right.
As I mentioned, it's always a pleasure and an honor to swear in a new volunteer, especially one that has spent the time and the hours to train and be prepared for this service. And certainly on behalf of our commission and the town of North Haven, we thank you for your effort. We want to thank the parents for the effort that you put forth, and I'm sure that you've been awakened in the middle of the night, for calls, and we thank you for that and for raising such a wonderful young person here. And I'm assuming this is Grandma here? Grandmother. Well, congratulations to you, Graham. We appreciate it very much, and rest assured that our captains and our leadership of the fire department are going to take good care of your young guy here. He's going to be well protected and saved and trained, and we appreciate his effort in delivering service for our residents of our town. It's an important component that of which the volunteers provide as far as assistance is concerned to our paid staff, and we certainly welcome them aboard. So thank you very much for all of you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So having said that and sworn in Mark, I'd like to ask for the approval of the minutes of the Board of Fire Commission meeting for December 17, 2019. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye. Yeah.
Opposed? So moved?
Yeah, we're going to recess real fast if you can.
Absolutely. Chief, we're going to take a recess for a couple of moments. We're going to take some family photos, and we'll resume in a few moments. Thank you. I'd like to reconvene the Tuesday, January 28, 2020 North Haven Fire Commission meeting. We are looking to discuss the chief's report.
Sure, so I'll start off with the chief's report. We'll cover alarms quickly. So alarms for 2019, at this point in time, we're at 355. Last year, this time, 346. We're only looking at a couple of weeks here worth of data, so not a lot to go off of. To close out 2019, we were at 4696 for alarms. 64% of those were EMS related, 29% were fire, and 7% were motor vehicle accidents. So we continue to stay, the short few weeks we've been through, consistent with trends for last year. 2015 at this time, we were at 308 alarms, a difference of 47. There's been 26 incident responses to the highway since our last meeting, and there's been approximately 550 incidents since our last meeting, 142 of which were overlapping, which is a consistent 26%. Regarding our budget, at this point in time, we are 59.8% spent, and at this time last year, we were at 67.2%. Since our last fire department meeting, commission meeting, we've collected $13,240 in permit fees. This brings us to a total of $334,100 this fiscal year. Regarding the fire marshal's office, 30 inspections, 7 re-inspections, 6 different code violations, 14 code violations were corrected. That carries over from last month. 1 abatement order issued, and 12 plan reviews and permits. Regarding training, we're taking advantage of what little cold weather we're getting right now and working through some cold weather operations, which includes changes in fire suppression related to the cold, as well as some ice rescues. We're working on hose deployment and search and rescue as well. Otherwise, I have nothing further for a chief's report. I have a couple things for executive session, and that's it.
Very good. Any questions of the chief regarding his report?
Just a quick question about the budget. Is that something that we could get, like you said, there's like 59% spent, but for me, it would help to be able to actually see it. Do you prepare like each month what's happening with the budget when things get transferred, things like that? Is there a way that we could?
The Board of Finance typically sees it every month, what it is. They have access to all of that. It's up to the chairman, whatever.
Yeah, that's something that we have never needed to review. The budget is created, obviously, as a result of the Board of Finance. It's administered by the chief, reported as to what percentile it is, as far as what percentile is spent. And the line items are reviewed by the finance director and the Board of Finance to make sure that we're within budget. So there was never any need for us, and it's really not our role as a commission to review each line item of the budget.
I'm not suggesting that we review each line item, but I do think if certain things are voted on that have budgetary impact that the Board of Fire Commissioners are going to vote on, we should know really what's happening with the budget on a regular basis. It also helps to advocate for the fire department if you know where the money is going, what the issues are, like even in terms of the budget and what gets put forward. I know there are other fire commissions that actually vote on the budgets before it goes to the Board of Finance. So I just think that information would be helpful to have because, there are certain decisions that are made that the fire commission makes that has a budgetary impact, and it would be hard to vote on those things unless you see what's happening with the budget. It's not that we would be administering the budget. It would certainly be, something that you're going to be dealing with on a regular basis. And when transfers happened, it's helpful to know as a fire commissioner when someone asks what's happening with the fire department to know, where the expenses are and what things had to be transferred for whatever reason. It just sort of gives you a better state of the fire, of what's
No, we
going
don't
on.
typically make transfers. There's no transfers from line to line typically.
And there,
But whatever.
And there are no items that we vote upon as a commission that are relative to purchases. When an apparatus is necessary, certainly there is an in-depth discussion based on the apparatus report that the chief provides us. And, we make a recommendation to the Board of Finance to either make an emergency purchase in the event we needed an emergency purchase. But if it's a scheduled purchase, it's a request for capital purchase. That request goes out to bid based on the specs that the fire department creates. So our commission doesn't necessarily vote on any line item purchase that I'm aware of, Chief. Was there anything?
No, I mean,
that
to
you
your
recall?
point, if there was something specific, we can certainly go over it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no issue with that, yeah.
I'm very visual, so I can go to the Board of Finance and ask them for the information, but it just seems that if we're meeting monthly, that would be a piece of information that would be helpful, to know what the state of the budget is and, where things are falling in terms of different line items. So and I know other fire commissions do actually vote on budgets before it goes before their Board of Finance, because you should be making, well, I would seem that some of the decisions that are made do have a financial impact, and to know where the budget is, and to be able to advocate for the fire department. To me, I would want to know more specifically what some of those things are, so I do much better when I see things than when I just hear them verbally, just because it helps, to remember what you've been told, and then if you see it ahead, you can always ask a question. But it just would seem that the fire commission should see the fire department budget and just on a regular basis.
Well, certainly the budget is established by the Board of Finance. Once they allocate the monies to the budget, the chief manages that budget, and he reports to us on a monthly basis, as he did today, what percentile of the budget is spent, based on collective bargaining discussions and payroll and so on and so forth. I think we, as a commission, again, have had no input or reason to have input on line items that the chief is managing, other than the fact that we are responsible to make sure that the budget is adhered to, and if it isn't, and in the past it had not been, it was overspent in overtime line items until the chief clarified with the Board of Finance what the obligated collective bargaining contract amounts are for vacation and sick time versus the actual overtime. And since that separation, and we advocated on that behalf as a commission to the Board of Finance, and we will continue to advocate for those type of items that need to be cleared and have a clear understanding. So we weren't looking like we were overspending every year, when in fact, in the past, it was as a result of collective bargaining agreements that we had no control over, that was negotiated by the town. But I think a lot of residents were unhappy with us because our spending for those, that particular line item was way out of whack, and we had no control over that. So we had contribution to discussion on that, but to oversee how much hose is being spent or PPE equipment's being spent, I don't see any need for us to get involved in that.
Well, I'm not suggesting that. I mean, when I was on the Board of Ed, we did see the budget monthly, and it wasn't that we were saying to the superintendent, you need to spend this amount on paper, this amount on books. It was basically to be able to, ask questions about, if there were any issues around the budget, or about strategically planning for how you're going to manage your budget for the years coming up. So it's not about micromanaging anything. It's really just about the knowledge about where the budget is. Again, I can go to the Board of Finance and ask them for it, but it seems to me that as the Fire Commission, and we're trying to advocate to make sure that that the fire department has the resources it needs to provide to the citizens of North Haven the type of fire service and emergency services they should have. Seeing the budget on a regular basis is sort of an important part of that. But again, that would be my request. If you don't want to do that, then I can ask the finance department.
Excuse me,
for it.
Jen, but have you been talking to West Haven folks?
Nope,
Because they have it's a different animal out there.
nope, it wasn't West Haven.
They negotiate contracts, the Board of Commissioners, like us, but they have they're way more involved in the operation. But, like Pat's talking about, I think the only time we even get involved in this is now, when the budget workshops are going on. We review it. I'm not clear on what it is you're asking for.
I'm just asking to see the budget on a regular basis.
Well,
And to be able to see even
But I
what
mean,
was.
would the budget be changing that you're looking for, or?
No, but if things come up that we're supposed to vote on that have a financial impact, I personally like to have the information before I would vote.
Well, I mean, I have no objection to you getting it, but I don't understand what you're looking for, because we don't change during the month. I mean, it's not like, I don't know, maybe you do. Look at your budget and say, okay, I spent this, and I don't know how it works, but I don't think it's what you're looking for. I don't know what I'm not clear on what you're looking for.
I
I
just
mean, you're
want to
looking
know
to
the
see
state
where
of the
money
fire
is
department
spent.
budget on a regular basis, that's all I'm asking, so.
So the budget is established by the Board of Finance. It's allocated to the fire department. The fire chief manages the budget based on what the monies were that were allocated to us. The chief reports to us where we are as far as a percentile of spending down of the budget on a monthly basis. He does not tell us that he spent X number of dollars on whatever. The Board of Finance absolutely has the information that you're looking for, and I think if you were in fact looking for that, I think Ed Swinkowski would be able to provide that for you. We've never needed to observe what each individual line item is, because we have the confidence in our senior management to manage the budget and purchase the items based on the requirements and needs of the department in accordance to the bidding process that's laid out by the town. So, and our commission really doesn't participate in approval of the purchase of any of the items that are on the budget, in the budget.
Well, I'm not talking about approving specific items that are in the budget. That's not, it's making this, if the fire commission is making decisions over, more decisions about, more guiding decisions about the fire department, you're making more, those types of decisions, you need to understand the budget, in my opinion. But if I need to go through the Board of Finance, I will, but I just don't feel comfortable making certain, if things come to a vote that have financial impact without understanding where the fire department budget is on an ongoing basis. And it has nothing to do with not trusting the chief. When I was on the Board of Ed, I had full confidence in the superintendent, but I asked questions about the budget, and the budget was brought to us on a regular basis because when we voted on certain issues, it had budgetary impact. So you have to understand your budget in order to make those, in my opinion, in order to make an informed decision. And that's all I'm asking for. It has nothing to do with wanting to micromanage anything. I don't believe in micromanaging. I don't believe it has anything to do with not having confidence in the chief. But to me, it would just be helpful information.
I think the Board of Education has a different structure than certainly we do and have. As far as the budget is concerned, I think they're more hands-on, as you're aware, than we are. And certainly, I believe our scope and responsibility as commissioners is not to be involved with the budget process. So if you wish to obtain information as far as where the budget is, you're certainly welcome to go to the Board of Finance and obtain that. And if you're uncomfortable at the time, whenever a time comes up, when we're going to be asked to vote on something for purchase, you can certainly always abstain from that vote if you feel that the explanation by the chief is insufficient for you to make that decision. But, you know, for years, this commission has worked under the same structure, and it has continued to work very well, taking the guidance from the chief and certainly the Board of Finance. And I think, you know, it's my position as the chair to continue to work in that same direction. But you're certainly welcome to go to the Board of Finance and obtain that information.
Okay.
Any other questions of the chief regarding his report? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to accept.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Correspondence.
Correspondence, I have three, but two of them came together. This is just a resident from Garfield Avenue thanking particularly the volunteers from West Ridge. They responded to her residence twice for a service call. And we're grateful that she was appreciative of our service, and it sounds like we were there twice within a very short period of time. The next one I have is from another resident. We're responding to, looks like it was his father, and he's complimentary of the staff, the career staff that attended, and names the paramedics specifically for their professional concern and knowledge. And those are the only two correspondence that I've received above and beyond the normal course of daily business.
Fine. Any commissioners receive any written communications? Hearing none, discussion of unfinished business for the fire department.
So I wanted to kind of recap with the budget presentation that was presented last Saturday, and it's currently online. Ask all of the viewing audience, if you have any interest in the budget presentation, to please go to the NHTV website or the Facebook website. There's a variety of ways that you can get to that link and watch that video. Shorter than in the past, which was good. It was only about an hour and a half long or so. And any questions from the commission or anything I can share or provide further insight on, I'm happy to do so.
Any questions of the chief regarding his proposed budget?
I have several. I had a couple of emails where people were just asking for clarification on some things. And the first was, I know several months ago you guys went over the apparatus and their current conditions. And so can we just get an update on the status on the apparatus and where we are with
Sure.
condition?
So I'm just going to find that in the appropriate place here so that I can reference it specifically and not contradict anything that I showed. So currently, as shown in slide 17 of the budget presentation, if you look there, engine 6, 4, 8, and 3 have all passed their annual pump certification testing and DOT inspection testing. I still have to get engine 1 and engine 7 through. I don't have any concerns there because there are newer apparatus. We always start with the older apparatus to get, because it typically predates the budget workshop. Engine 2 remains out of service since June 9th of 2019. It's been at New England Fire Equipment since that time, and only at New England Fire Equipment. The update as of today, or yesterday in fact, was that it's currently painted, and we expect that to return to service within the next 30 days. They had always said sometime January-ish. It looks like we're pretty much on target for that.
And what's the, I think they were asking more specifically for ages of the different
Sure.
apparatus.
Of all the apparatus?
Yep.
Sure. So engine 1 is 6 years old. Engine 7 is 8 years old. Engine 2, which was the one that was sitting in the highway and currently in the shop, is 16 years old. Engine 6 is 20. Engine 4 is 26. Engine 8 is 29, and engine 3 is 33 years old.
Okay. And there was one vehicle that didn't pass, right?
This current fiscal year, no.
Okay.
Nope, there has been in the past, but not this current fiscal year.
Okay.
Yep. And just to elaborate on that further on your question, truck 2, which is what sits here, is that's what replaced engine 5. Engine 5 is what did fail an annual test a couple of years ago. And when we replaced the truck at headquarters, I was able to make good use of the end of the life that was left on the truck and put it here, essentially saving taxpayers money from having to go out and buy an engine that had failed 2 years prior. That truck we knew had been plagued with problems, which is why we had aimed to replace it. And as we had expected, it failed its aerial test just a few weeks ago. So it is currently sitting out there right now, and the aerial is not in service.
That's 5.
That's truck 2. 5 is out of here. 5 is not in service in the fleet anymore.
Okay.
Yep.
And 2, I thought 2 was the one that got hit.
Engine 2 was. This is truck 2.
Truck 2,
Yep.
okay.
Engine 2 is back online, chief,
It will not be for about another 30 days or so.
for another 30 days?
Thereabouts, yeah.
That's the one that got hit?
Yep.
Well, what's the problem with it?
Just takes a long time to go through the body work. That's what it is. It's taking that long. The paint and everything else that had to get done to it.
Some of the other questions they asked, and I know some of this you kind of went over in the budget workshop, but how many paid firefighters do we have, and what stations are they in?
So there are currently 2 shifts of 10 and 2 shifts of 8.
And the shifts of 10,
When it's a shift of 10, there's going to be 3 firefighters assigned to the Monowee station.
and how many do you foresee that we actually need? Like, what's your ultimate goal?
So that's kind of a loaded question, because it kind of depends a little bit on what continues to happen with the town. So to get us the current call volume of where we sit today, we need to get to the rest of the shifts being at 10.
Okay. Okay. And then how many volunteers, I know you had this in your presentation, how many do you have per station?
So at West Ridge, there is 14 qualified, 3 probationary. At Monowee, there's 11 qualified and 7 probationary. At Northeast, which is where we sit here, there's 13 qualified and 1 probationary. That may have changed tonight based on the fact we just swore somebody in.
Okay. This is Northeast, okay. And then the other question they asked was how many volunteers either resigned, retired, were dismissed, or moved to a paid position within the last 2 years?
Yes, I wasn't able to get those numbers together for you since Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, when you had emailed me Sunday night, I haven't been able to get that together.
Okay.
I can tell you that in the last 5 years, it was easier for me to find the number of those who were elevated to career positions, whether it be our department or elsewhere, and that number was 5.
Okay.
But it's gonna be, it's not necessarily gonna be an easy number to identify, only because some don't retire, some don't resign, some just don't work out. I mentioned during a workshop that, those that are on probation, not all of them are gonna come on and become firefighters. They can't make the commitment that they thought they could when they signed up, or they can't complete the school. It's not for everybody, so,
Yeah.
do you call that retired, do you call that resigned? I mean, what do you call that? It just.
Well, if they were, I was thinking more from people that were actually, the numbers that were actually on as volunteers, not the ones that are like in that probationary period.
Right.
Really, I think is more what.
Yeah, I mean, I did show the numbers from last year, or I did discuss them anyways, and they're pretty much the same. We've stabilized our volunteer numbers in the last few years.
Okay.
They've certainly stabilized.
Okay, and then what percentage of calls do the volunteers, are they called in for assistance?
Sure, so I wouldn't be able to give you a percentage, and what I would be able to tell you is that the volunteers are dispatched to any incidents, fire incidents that involve, and this isn't an exclusive list, But it would be car fires, house fires, commercial fire alarms, not residential, target fire alarms. So a target building would be, let's say, like a group home where there's people inside that would not be able to evacuate the structure in a timely manner. They do some service calls, they do major accidents, and again, at the top of my head, those are predominantly what they roll out for.
Okay.
And they're dispatched the same exact time as the career side.
And then what percentage of times do you have an idea of when they are actually able to respond versus when they're not?
Yep. So again, West Ridge, which would be including both engines 4 and 6, they're able to assemble a response and respond with those engines, one of the two, depending on which one was dispatched, 51% of the time. Northeast, which covers Truck 2 and Engine 7, is able to respond 65% of the time. Mono East, which is Engines 2 and 8, is able to respond 61% of the time they're dispatched.
And then you did talk about this, I know, on the budget workshop, but in terms of the things that you're doing to recruit volunteers, can you just kind of give a little?
Sure. So the volunteers have in recent years, so I can tell you, let me just go back a little bit and fill you on what it was when I had first became chief. And the way that it was situated then was the 3 individual firehouses, volunteer firehouses, really kind of controlled their own kingdom in some ways. You had to see the captain had to approve your application. There was kind of the gatekeeper and required the person to come around so many times and then went ultimately for a chief's interview. And then before the commission to be approved as a probationary member. I did not like that approach. I kind of saw that there was an opportunity for some favoritism to be taking place, and I wanted to standardize it so that no matter which station you were deciding to join, and it's typically done by where you live, it's not like you have a whole lot of choice, but no matter where you were, it was the same process. I believe in standardization and process for this. So we changed it, and what we did was we have a representation from each of the volunteer stations now, and they're volunteers themselves, and they sit on an interview committee, and they interview the candidates that are coming in, and they decide for themselves. Typically, it's not something that we say no to. There are some times that they've said no, but it's a conversation of what it takes to be a volunteer and what the level of commitment is, and they're able to ask questions, and it's run by the volunteers with a member of the public that oversees the entire thing, and he goes to all of those meetings. The volunteers are able to field questions and become approved that way. So in terms of what we've done to recruit, that to me was one of the biggest things, because we made it so that they have direct contact with volunteers. So we continue to stay active with some of the state and national campaigns to recruit volunteers. We've done open houses along with the rest of the towns that were participating before. We did not have much luck, in all honesty, to the point where the last year, I want to say, none of the volunteers even wanted to do it, because it gets a lot of media and a lot of publicized, news coverage, but nobody's coming. We've done signs up in front of all the stations. You may not see them up right now because of the time of year. They got ruined, but the signs will go back up. We've done a hotline where anybody who's interested in calling now leaves a message instead of, I can't control who answers the phone all the time. So there's a hotline dedicated, and I will personally listen to the message, and I will forward it to a volunteer for a volunteer to call that person back. Going back to that whole committee structure. Beyond that, the leadership of the volunteers, which includes the captains, there's one captain for each station, as well as the association leadership, met with Mike Fried and I probably about 2 years ago, and we asked them what they want as volunteers, what they need, and there were a few things I identified. They wanted to see an increase in the abatement, they wanted to see the training increased, and they want to see the training center. And Mike Fried and I have worked to bring those things around. There was a recent update to the abatement. There's been some changes to the retirement program that they have. But I think we transitioned to a point now where we're trying to retain what we have. Most recently, we started the Explorer program in the high schools, where we're trying to bring on that young demographic of 14 to 18-year-olds so that we can build their interest and get them interested in a career in the fire service. Even if they only serve for 2 years, that's 2 years more than we're getting out of anybody else right now. But we started to transition to really focus on retainment of what we have, and we continue with the ongoing recruitment, and I really leave it up to, in large part, to the volunteers, and it's word of mouth.
Chief, I was speaking to Chief Marola at the swearing in, and I mentioned to him, when he was chief, we had a lot of fun as volunteers. That's why the guys used to, I believe, that's why they used to come around. But now it seems like it's all business. So maybe that's why we're having a problem getting some
It's like that everywhere.
volunteers.
But it is business, Joe. Times have changed since we had 150 volunteers, back when the fire department just began in 1967. Liability is a big issue, workers' comp is a big issue, training's a big issue. All of those requirements that volunteers have today, they did not have back then. As you said to me, some young firefighter, with no gear on would jump on the back of, or in a truck
That happened here,
and with
yeah.
sneakers on and go to a grass fire. I mean, that can't happen today.
I know, I understand
And so as a result, there have been requirements that have been implemented for the safety of the firefighter, as well as for the protection of the town and the residents of the town from the liability standpoint. The other thing was, certainly we require today that volunteer firefighters meet certain medical criteria, because there's nothing worse than one of our senior managers or one of us as fire commissioners having to speak to a spouse of a volunteer that is injured or passes, and they turn around and say, well, why did you let them do that? Because they were so terribly overweight or hypertensive or whatever. And so all of that criteria that has been implemented over the most recent years also has dwindled our workforce, because those folks were not medically qualified in order to do the job. And as you know, Joe, and you saw it firsthand, it's a strenuous job as a volunteer firefighter. So I believe, and I think this commission believes certainly, that the volunteers that we have currently are better trained, in better physical condition, are able to respond in some instances 51% of the time, in other instances 61% of the time, because their jobs allow them the opportunity to do so, their families allow them to do so, and they're willing to do it. But unfortunately, I think in today's society, with volunteerism down across the board in all avenues, and with the requirements of training in medical criteria and response to a certain number of calls that need to take place, it's difficult for young people to make that commitment to us. And that was the reason why we systematically petitioned the Board of Finance to bring full-time firefighters on board that are working and we could depend upon to deliver the services to the residents of the town as required based on the call volume. So, things have changed dramatically in our department as well as departments across this country. And some of the things that I mentioned are the reason why they changed.
I mean, Chief Morrell's been gone for almost 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's living down in the Niantic area of the state, so I'm not even sure if he's referring to this department being all business, but I'm sure where he is, it's all business. It's like that everywhere.
Yeah,
I think also the volunteer system is a stepping stone for anybody who has aspirations of being a career firefighter. I mean, just look and see how many volunteers have gone to career departments from us.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
the numbers is extraordinary.
Just the reason I'm asking these questions is because this was asked of me, and I think people, you know, if we want them to support the idea that we need to be looking at adding career firefighters on, they need to understand what's happening with the volunteers. So that's really where I think this discussion is important, because it really is to educate people about, you know, what's happening and why it is we would be looking to move to increase the career firefighters.
I agree with you, Jen. We have had this discussion numerous times at multiple fire commission meetings, articulating the reason why we have had difficulty recruiting and retaining volunteer firefighters, and we'll continue to do that. I think you're correct. It's critically important for the public to understand why we're making this request. And yes, a full-time firefighter is going to cost significantly more money, because obviously volunteers are volunteers. There is some cost associated with them, of course, in training and equipment. But the truth of the matter is, when you look at full-time personnel in any business, that's where the greatest expense comes. But in the meantime, we can count on those persons responding 100% of the time. Because if they're on shift and there are 10 full-time firefighters on a shift, we know all 10 of those firefighters are going to be able to respond.
Right.
We can't count on our volunteers, unfortunately, in many instances, 50% of the time that they're called.
Right.
And if you or your loved one is in need of assistance, and our 8-person shift or 10-person shift is out, all 3 apparatus are out, we have no other persons to call.
Right.
So, you know, and that's what the chief has been working on, along with Mike Frieda and the Board of Finance, so that we systematically will be able to hire additional personnel to be able to perform the duties that this department and commission is charged to perform. So, anyway, any other questions?
No, I mean, I think the last thing that this particular individual asked about was doing a townwide survey on something like one of those free survey tools that would ask people what would attract them to being a volunteer firefighter, just to get a sense of whether we get any additional feedback that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're all great ideas. I think what we need to be careful of is spending time on something that we know is not going to have an answer. You look at the surrounding towns. Wallingford closed down a volunteer station. Meriden just closed down a volunteer station. Brantford took over. Guilford's hiring. I mean, everywhere we look, we're not going to recreate something. We're not going to come up with some miraculous idea through a survey that's going to change the national trend, or specifically the trend in this area. It's just not going to happen. This is the new norm. We need to be able to adjust to it. I just don't see I think we need to focus on retainment and grab the recruitment as we can, but we're foolish if we think we're going to see the numbers that we saw 10 years ago or 15 years ago. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
Chief,
It's just not.
correct me if I'm wrong, didn't the Wallingford chief implement a statewide cable network
Yeah, the
advertisement, right?
There was a Wallingford chief that was advertising on ESPN for volunteer firefighters. It worked for about a year, and then those same people that had an interest realized how much time commitment there was and backed off. And that's, I'm just a realist in that I just don't see anything that we're going to come up with. I can tell you that the department I came from is offering free college tuition to anybody that wants to be a volunteer firefighter. Imagine getting college for free if you just stay an active firefighter and they can't get help. So, I mean, we can throw all the money at it we want and time, and it's not something that I think is going to be valuable. I think that we need to focus on the volunteers we have now and stabilize what we have now and focusing on the retainment. And a lot of that is getting this training center built behind here that they've asked for years.
Right. Any other questions?
No, that was the end of my.
Right.
No, good.
Okay, so that was the budget recap. Chief, the state of the fire apparatus, I know you already touched on that.
Yeah, we touched on it. I mean, I was just going to mention, in addition to what was already mentioned, we expect the new engine to arrive in May of 2020. We'll determine what's going to come out of service at that time. I traveled to Ohio last couple of weeks and looked at a used ladder truck, which is approved in this current capital year budget. And it looked good. It was independently evaluated. I personally witnessed it, and we've got a bid out right now, and it closes this week, and we're subject to the bid terms at this point. So we are pursuing that in an effort to replace what's out here. And then the only thing I had for you as well was the AFG grant. I just saw an email today. Looks like it's going to open, I believe, February 2nd. And so my intention is to put in for an apparatus. Again, it's probably the last time we're going to be able to do it, because then once we get the new engine in, it's going to change all of our numbers around, and our best chance of getting it is going to be the last year or two, and this one last year we have coming up. And as I explained to the Board of Finance, the apparatus grants are the most competitive in the whole country. So I'm optimistic. I've already got it being reviewed by a couple of people that are really good at this, and we'll see if we make the cut or not.
And the one that you looked at, the apparatus you looked at, how old was that one? You said used, right?
I believe it was a 2005. Might have been a 2008. I'm sorry. That one was a 2008.
And then how long after it goes through the bid process would it take?
So it's going to have to get some things done to it, but it looks like we would be able to take delivery of it within 30 to 60 days.
Okay.
And certainly, that ladder truck, Jen, would replace the ladder truck that is here in this station, that the ladder has failed. So that truck is no longer, we're no longer using that truck, Chief?
Well, it's still being used, but the ladder can't be
The
used.
ladder
It
isn't
still
being
carries a complement of tools and so forth and personnel to the scene. So for
Okay.
that aspect, it's still being used.
But didn't the siren fail or the lights
No.
or something? Was that on that truck?
No.
No.
This one is the ladder. The ladder's failed.
Okay, all right. So, I mean, obviously, we've got an old fleet.
Yep.
And we've been talking about the fleet for a number of years to the Board of Finance, and as we spoke to them last week about it, and we spoke about, what you and I spoke about prior to you coming on board, allocating some monies on an annual basis to put aside in order to purchase apparatus. So that's on the table. Whether or not it's approved by the Board of Finance is to be determined. But certainly that's a discussion that had taken place at the workshop that the chief proposed. Any other questions of the chief regarding unfinished business?
I've got two more things quickly.
Go ahead, chief.
The Connecticut OEMS PSAR, we were provided a preliminary decision in our favor on January 10th. I had mentioned at the workshop that I anticipated AMR filing an appeal. They have since filed an appeal. It is likely that this decision, the final decision, may be dragged out another 4 to 6 months. And that's all I have for unfinished business.
Okay. Any other questions of the chief regarding unfinished business? Here or none, I'll accept the motion to accept.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any question on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? So moved. New business of the fire department.
New business, just want to bring to the commission's attention, we had at one point in time, a few months ago, decided on participating in the state consortium hiring process, which is basically look at it as a state firefighting application. There are a total of 16 fire departments now participating in this. It's possible we may get another couple. What's the nice thing about this is this, again, is advertised everywhere. It greatly increases our diversity in our applicant pool. It allows the candidates to pay $145, which is not a fee set by us. It's a fee set by the company we've set with, yeah. And this is something that for one fee, they're able to get on the list of all these different departments. And we had some success with this last time around, and we were participants the last time around. This has only been done once before, 2 years ago, and we were one of the first 10 departments to ever be part of this. So we continue to stay moving forward with this. Applications are open till February 12th, and the list is going to go active sometime in the summertime. and we look forward to being able to hire from this list that's established. This does not preclude us from being able to establish an internal hiring list for our own volunteers, and our profile clearly states that. And that's all I have for new business.
Perfect. Anything for the good of the fire department?
Good to the department, just wanted to reference that the CERT team has started their third class for new recruits, new CERT members. It started about 3 weeks ago, and there's 10 to 12 participants, and that team continues to grow and develop. There's a van now in their possession that they're working to remodel and make fit for what they need it to be for, and we hope to have that available by the summertime.
We certainly thank those residents who have
Absolutely.
volunteered to participate in the CERT, on the CERT committee. And, you know, they perform valuable services during the time of need. So certainly on behalf of this commission, we thank them for their effort. Public comments? Yes.
Can I sit for here?
Sure, that's fine.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. Sally Wamey, 5 Blossom Drive. I have 2 areas of discussion prepared, but I just wanted to review the apparatus report quickly. The chief said that when the new engine, which was approved at the February 2019 town meeting, the purchase of that new engine is coming in May, you said now, May
Correct.
2020. You will be determining which apparatus that will be replacing. It was my understanding that it was always going to be the second oldest that was going to be replaced. But is that being rethought now?
So I referenced it during the budget workshop, but I'm not going to commit to anything until we
right.
know. But yeah, that's the idea.
But
Yeah.
a year ago, yeah, because you had said you wanted to keep the oldest
Correct.
one for the FEMA grant. And
Yep.
so my guess is it would be either the one that's 29 years old or the one that's 33.
Sure, I mean, there could be a catastrophic failure
Right.
tomorrow, and that's why everything I'm saying is, we
Okay.
intend to do this, but, yeah.
Okay, so I just, when you said to be determined, I thought maybe something had changed.
No, no.
But you're wording it that way in case of some
Correct.
unforeseen, that makes sense to
Yep.
me. Because as you said, they both passed inspections. Whichever one gets replaced, do you see it as having resale value, or do you intend to keep it for training, or what will happen to the one that will be replaced in a few months?
Sure, so we're likely going to keep one for training. We still have engine 5, which was what failed here.
Right.
Like I said, that's not currently in service in our active fleet, but it is in our possession still for training. And the nice thing with that is when you're working with firefighters to pull hoses off it and pull equipment off of it, it's great to be able to leave that there when a call comes in so that you're not trying to hastily put everything back together and put it on. So we will keep either engine 5 or whichever engine gets replaced. I just don't know which one that's going to be yet.
Right.
For training.
So you
It's
keep
gonna
it
be just for training.
That was
Yep.
my question, whether it had, because it passed, I thought it might have resale value, but it might have more value to us for training.
Correct.
Okay, with that said, so that list that was given will change in a couple of months with the ages, either 29 or 33 will be gone, and we'll have a 1-year-old.
Correct. Newborn.
A newborn, an infant.
Yes, which I voted in favor of.
Well, we appreciate that.
The 2 issues that I had prepared, one is about the fire inspector. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. This is Mr. Etherton, who does the 1 to 4-year inspections, the statutorily required inspections.
Some of them, yep.
Yeah, he does some of them, because you had told me you do some. 30 were done, as you said in your report, this month. 30 were done this month.
Correct.
How many did he do? Versus-
I don't
you
have that.
Okay. Now, he uses a town car, a red, I saw that car, a red car. I assume that's okay. He's not a town employee, he's an independent contractor, but he can use a town car.
Yeah, I believe so.
Right.
Not aware that's a
And,
problem.
As far as, now, I'm sure he doesn't have any pension or health benefits as an independent contractor, but I was wondering about workers' comp and liability, how is that handled for him?
He's an independent contractor. He signs a contract, and the Board of Finance and Personnel takes care of all of that.
The workers' comp?
There's a contract that he signs,
Okay.
and it's on file with Personnel, so they deal with all of that with him.
Okay. Because I talked to the finance director today, and he said to ask you. So you're sending me back there. I will go back there. Thank you. And then finally, I just wanted to follow up on your presentation at the workshop, which I attended. You had the breakdown of the approximate 4,600 calls a year. And I know you go by calendar year with your statistics. Most of our budgetary analysis are done by fiscal year, but your analysis of data as far as alarms, you use the calendar year, which is fine. So you had given a breakdown of 60% medical, 30% fire, 10% motor vehicle, approximately in that ballpark. And I just wanted to know, because 30% fire of 4,500 would be 1,350 incidences. And I know, according to the 2018 town calendar, in 2017 we had 19 fires, and in 2018 there were 30 fires. So I wanted to know, for this 30%, which is 1,350, what other categories fall under? I assume any alarms at commercial enterprises would fall under a fire incident. What else falls under to establish that 30%?
Sure, so what you're referencing in the town calendar were building fires.
Yes.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying, people hear 30% fires, they might think, wow, that's, but-
So it could be a-
Yeah, because I'm just trying to get an understanding of all the criteria that makes up, I know
Sure.
that structure fires is a very small number. 19 is almost
Sure, so
statistically insignificant.
Yep, so that's going to include fires contained to, oftentimes what you see in infers is you'll see fires contained to the cooking item itself. That could include residential fire alarms, commercial fire alarms, car fires, brush fires, car accident, well, I'm sorry, not car accidents, service calls, elevator rescues, rail incidents, hazmats, a variety of things. Anything that's not an EMS call, or anything that's not a motor vehicle accident.
That's what I was kind of thinking, that so if it's not an EMS and it's not a motor vehicle, although you said car fires, I mean, but that doesn't necessarily have to be
It's not an
the result
accident.
of an accident.
Correct.
But it could be also.
Yeah.
So basically, it's any other call that's not medical or not an accident. You're
Correct.
combining, okay, I just wanted to clear that up. And finally, at the workshop, it was requested from several members of the Board of Finance that copies of those slides that you had presented be sent to us, and by us, I mean, whatever the Board of Finance gets, they usually send to me and the rest of the Board of Selectmen. I haven't received anything. Would those be forthcoming?
I've sent those off, so you just don't have them
Oh, you
yet.
sent them to Board of Finance, well then, when I,
Yep, I gotta see who it was sent to, if it was Ed or if it was Mr. Frida or who it was, but it's been sent off and it's on them to distribute it from
to
there. yeah.
distribute it to the Board of, okay, so you did that. Because I hadn't received anything, and I couldn't really see those slides from where I was sitting at the presentation, and it's hard for me to read them
Sure.
going online. So I will ask them to forward those to me. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
You made one comment about the calendar read that we only had 19 house fires.
Yes, structural.
Yeah, and you felt like that was a small percentile of it's all, and not all
I
that.
knew that it didn't qualify for 30%, so
Yeah,
I knew there had to be
yeah.
other criteria. That was the point of my
Yeah,
question.
but you made a comment that it was kind of no big deal.
No, I didn't say no big deal. Any fire is a very big deal.
But that's what I was gonna say, for those 19 homes, that was a big deal. That's for
you
sure.
heard me say no big deal, sir. Please don't put words in my
I'm
mouth. Any
I'm not putting
structural
words in your mouth at
Thank you.
all.
Thank you.
Not,
Significantly insignificant, I believe
yeah,
is the
yeah,
quote.
yeah, maybe
I
that's what it
said that
was.
it was statistically insignificant, 19 versus
Okay.
4,500.
I just want to make sure.
I was saying mathematically.
No, I just want to make sure that, from our standpoint, any fire is important and a critical thing.
No,
But-
especially, I mean, we've had some loss of water.
Absolutely.
The past couple of years, absolutely not. I would never imply that, and I would vehemently oppose those words being put in my mouth. I said.
Nobody's putting any
Yeah,
words in your mouth.
okay, all right.
Stop saying that, please,
Okay,
please.
all right, well, I
Please.
didn't mean to say that it was, what I was meaning to say was, the chief reported about 4,500 incidents with a breakdown of 60% medical, 30% fire, 10% motor vehicle. Since I know that we have a significantly small, not in importance.
Correct.
But in pure mathematical number of actual structural fires, I was interested in knowing what constituted the rest of that 30%. And now I know it could be cooking, residential, commercial, car service, elevators, other service calls, hazmat. Now I know what constitutes that 30%.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other public comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to move into executive session. Do I hear a second? All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. The Tuesday, January 28, 2020 North Haven Fire Commission meeting to order. I'd like to ask if there's any additional comments or business coming before this commission. If not, I'd like to announce that our next regularly scheduled commission meeting will be Tuesday, February 25th, 2020, 6 p.m. in the training room of Northeast Company 4, 366 Washington Avenue, North Haven. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? This meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.